Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to be sharing 10 of my favorite action movies. This is going to be a continuation of a series I've kind of started where I talk about just some of my favorite movies within different genres and styles of filmmaking. So let's get this intro going and we'll get started. Welcome once again, my name is Austin and this channel is all about helping you to dig deeper and go further to better understand faith and film and everything that's in between. If that sounds exciting to you, make sure you click the subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on any future content. So I'm kind of backlogging and recording a few videos ahead of time just because I don't know what my posting schedule will be over the next couple of months. So I'm getting ahead with some pre-recorded videos, and in this one, I'm going to be sharing 10 of my favorite action movies. Kicking things off with one of the top action franchises currently today, I'm going to go with Mission Impossible Fallout. One of the coolest things about the Mission Impossible franchise is it's something that's become better with pretty much each movie in the franchise. This is the 6th movie in the franchise. They're still working on 2 more, so if they continue at the trajectory they're going, these next 2 are going to just be even better with this one and somehow top it. But this movie just goes from action set piece to action set piece, which is awesome. But then there's also a really good story along the way as we follow Tom Cruise's character of Ethan Hunt and his kind of, exploits with the MI force. And so it's really cool to see a really great movie with excellent, lot of practically focused stunts, but at the same time, a really good story with the character of Ethan Hunt. And this movie probably does the best job kind of exploring that persona of Ethan Hunt and how he's willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good of many lives. And it's really interesting to just kind of see that explored throughout the film. You got great performances from Tom Cruise. Henry Cavill plays a great agent villain type role. Rebecca Ferguson is great. She's one of my favorite actresses working today. And then seeing the team, as always, that Ethan Hunt works with is also always great. So Mission Impossible Fallout will start off this list. And just like I mentioned with the animated movies list that I did last week, these won't necessarily be in any particular order. They're just 10 of my favorite action movies. There's a couple on here. I'll tell you if it really is one of my favorites because there's at least a couple. But for the most part, it'll just be a list of my 10 favorite action movies. Now, if the Mission Impossible franchise is the pinnacle of action movies coming from the United States, The Raid might be the pinnacle of action movies coming from foreign countries. This movie is absolutely insane with what it accomplishes. It's one of those awesome 90-minute action thrillers, and it takes place within this apartment complex that a crime boss kind of has this control over. The police are going in to raid it. They got 30 cops. There's a ton of floors that they have to get through to go to the top floor where this crime boss is, and they just got to fight their way to the top. And so you get to follow along with the main character as well as his guys that he's working with as they just progressively work their way up this building. So it's very light on the story, but the story that is there is still interesting and well done. There's good convictions for each of the characters of kind of why they're there, what they're doing. There's some good twists along the way, but front and foremost is definitely the action for this one. This has some of the most mind-blowing fight choreography and action sequences I've ever seen. The Raid 2, the sequel to this one, really expands on the story aspect of this kind of franchise, but I still am a little preferential to the first one just because of kind of the simplicity of it. It's not as complicated, and not that the second one is convoluted, but I just love the simplicity of this one, how the action's front and foremost. Like I said, the choreography is insane. Some of the fights and stunts are just mind-blowing what they're able to accomplish. It's got great music along the way. This is an absolute thrill ride. So if you've not seen The Raid, this is definitely one of the ones that's top of my list for action movies. Next, we have John Wick. Now, this is the 3-movie pack for the first 3 movies, but in particular, my favorite of the trilogy so far has got to be the original John Wick still. I really enjoyed John Wick Chapter 2, and I still have a lot of fun with John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, but the first one is just so good. Similar in some ways to The Raid, and how I just really appreciate kind of the simplicity and the setup of this one. Keanu Reeves is perfect casting for the character of John Wick, and it's really awesome to see a stunt team that's so committed to doing stunts well and how to choreograph them in a convincing yet still stylized and fun way. And like I said, there's a simplistic story of John, who was an assassin, got out, got married, had lived a happy life. His wife died, left him something that is taken from him, and now he's back for revenge. So not much more simple than that, but the action's great. You get some awesome gunfighting sequences that are continually grown and expanded on in subsequent films, but I still just love the simplicity of the first one, kind of the world before it was expanded and explored. As much as I enjoy the lore of the John Wick world, I still just have a huge soft spot for the original. Next, we have Hot Fuzz. Now, Hot Fuzz is actually off of my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I absolutely love this movie. Now, the awesome thing about this movie is it's a great blend of multiple different genres. Now, this is, for me, front and foremost an action movie, but at the same time, it's equally a comedy. This is not only one of the greatest action movies, in my opinion, it's also one of the best comedies. So it's really good at threading that line of having just hilarious jokes constantly throughout the film, while at the same time just having this crazy and awesome action throughout. We follow this guy who's kind of a city cop, and he's just so good at his job. His precinct sends him to this nowhere town in the country of England, and so he goes here and is just kind of overdoing it still, and just finds all of these crazy things that are going on in this seemingly quiet town, and it's just absolutely hilarious. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost are comic gold when it comes to the humor of this film, as well as much of the supporting cast as well. There's tons of crazy twists and turns. Like I said, it's genre bending of action, comedy. There's some almost horror elements to the movie as well in a few different sequences, like slasher stuff that it leans into. So it's just a great blend of all those different things, and it does each of them incredibly well. So that is definitely one of my favorite action movies of all time. Next, we have Police Story. Now, this one's really interesting because this is a franchise I only just got into in the past, I think 6 months or so, but these are some really old school Jackie Chan movies. In particular, I think I like the first one best of them. I have seen the first one twice. I've only seen the second one once, so I do need to rewatch the second one to kind of pick which one I might like a little more, but for the time being, the first one is one that just absolutely blew my mind when I was watching it for the first time. So I was watching it and I just couldn't stop thinking to myself, how did they do that? How did they do that? How did they do that? This movie just goes from scene to scene, blowing your mind with its stunts. One cool thing about this is Jackie Chan, I believe, wrote, directed, starred in, did the stunt coordination, and even sung the theme song for this movie. So I think he's a man of so many talents, and he did each of them so well. The coolest thing about this is many of the stunts in this movie you just would not see in the United States just because of probably safety guidelines and stuff. Like, Jackie Chan put himself through the ringer to get this movie made, and it's fantastic, and the result is probably one of the greatest action movies ever made. The stunts are mind-blowing. He does these just death-defying things of hanging off moving vehicles, holding onto an umbrella, sliding down a pole of like a 4-story building. He breaks so many bones. All these things happen in this movie. It's awesome. And it has some fun humor too, some drama to it along the way. So it's, classic Jackie Chan mix, but it just makes for a great action movie. So if you've not seen these, I highly recommend checking them out. Next, we have one of the 90s classics for action movies, another Keanu Reeves movie, and that is Speed. This is also starring Sandra Bullock, and both of them have great on-screen chemistry, which is so much fun to see. And this might be the pinnacle of 90s action, at least one of them for sure. Again, very simple premise of bomb on bus. Once it reaches a certain speed, you go below that speed, bus blows up. So Keanu Reeves is trying to figure out who the bomb maker is and how to get him to stop it, while along the way keeping this bus moving. So the adrenaline is just constantly pumping throughout this movie. So you get some great thrilling action sequences of them just trying to maneuver to keep this bus moving at over 50 miles an hour. But along the way, you get great on-screen chemistry from Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves. So that's awesome to see. They have good chemistry. They bounce off of each other really well with the drama, some of the jokes they make along the way, and it works out really well. And again, simple premise, but just executed so well and is so exhilarating to watch. So I love this one. It's a great classic of the 90s era. So I'm going to somewhat not necessarily cheat with these last few picks, but these last three movies kind of blend with the science fiction or fantasy genre, but I consider them foremost action movies, so I do want to include them on this list. I am planning on doing a top 10 of my favorite fantasy and science fiction movies as well, so that's going to be coming soon, but for the time being, I consider these first and foremost action movies rather than science fiction or fantasy, so I want to include them on this list. So the first of those three, kind of the least fantastical of them, is going to be The Dark Knight. Now, the reason I think this is an awesome action movie is because the set pieces are fantastic for some of the action sequences, and being in Christopher Nolan films, he's going to do them as practically as he can, and he's going to shoot them on a huge IMAX camera. So you're gonna enjoy the action sequences at the very least. You get great performances, most notably, obviously, from Heath Ledger. Gary Oldman gives a great performances as Gordon, and then you get Christian Bale's awesome performance as Bruce Wayne and Batman. Michael Caine, also fantastic Alfred performance, and this movie just fires on all cylinders. And I mean, there's not much I can say about this that hasn't already been said. It's one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. And because I consider it an action movie, I'd say this is one of the best action movies ever made because there's such a grounded nature to this trilogy, most particular with this one because as they play it for real. There's no like magic. I mean, there's some science fiction technology along the way, obviously, but it's played so down to earth realistically of just like a crime drama that it works so well. But because there's such big, awesome action sequences, it has to be, for me, one of my favorite action movies. Next, very much in the sci-fi genre for this one, we have The Matrix. Now, this one is absolutely a sci-fi one, and there's probably going to be some cross exploration of this one on my sci-fi list as well, but being an action movie front and foremost, I can't not include this on one of my favorite action movies list. The action is excellent for this movie. They do such a cool job with their special effects of just giving us stuff we had never seen before, at least in US cinema. So it's awesome to see this come together. And it's got so much commentary on society, religion, and so many different things. It's one that I just love kind of exploring and talking about with people. It's one of my favorite movies to discuss. And so just the combination of a greatly designed world, really cool characters and action, and a really neat story along the way. It definitely is one of the best movies ever made. It is off of my top 10 favorite movies list, but also one of my favorite action movies. Just finished recording this video, put all of my recording equipment away, was going through my list and realized I only did 9 out of my 10. So 10th movie on this list is Mad Max Fury Road. This is another one that kind of moves somewhat into the science fiction genre as well, but this just first and foremost, again, kind of like The Matrix, is an action movie. What Frank Miller was able to do, I believe that's his name, for this film was astounding. They used incredible practical effects along with some great special effects along the way of the CGI, and this is just groundbreaking. You barely notice it's there. But this movie just is the coolest and most adrenaline-fueled car chase ever put to a movie, and the entire movie is basically just a car chase. So along with that, great world building along the way, great villainous characters, great hero characters. Furiosa is awesome, portrayed by Charlize Theron, as well as Tom Hardy's Mad Max as well. This is just a great one. I've not seen any of the other movies in this franchise, but I love this one. It kind of sets itself apart and very much stands alone from the franchise, kind of from what I've heard, but I just absolutely love this one. Finally, we have a franchise that I've been raving about for probably the past year and a half now at this point, the Rurouni Kenshin series. This in particular is part 3 of the 5 movies that there are. This is probably my favorite of the bunch. I go back and forth between 2 and 3, but this one just kind of takes Kenshin to such an interesting place, and it's probably one of his lowest points within the franchise of these movies, of just a wandering swordsman who's trying to put his life of assassination and killing behind him, but at the same time protecting the people who need him. So it's awesome to see. We get Shishio, the great villain and classic one from the anime that I also watched, and we just get some awesome moments of them going head to head. These movies have some of the best sword play, sword fighting action sequences that I've ever seen. And this one probably showcases it the most, or at least has some of my favorite action moments in the franchise. So this is definitely one of my favorite action movies of all time. And it's a very recent one, at least of ones I've seen. So, I mean, between Police Story and this, there's definitely some recent ones amongst the films that I've seen on this list that easily crack my top 10 list for favorite action movies. So that wraps up my list of my 10 favorite action movies of all time. I hope you enjoyed hearing my picks. I would love to hear some of your picks in the comments down below, so make sure to hop down there and join me in the conversation. Thank you for checking out this video. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I will see you in the next one.